Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good to see you. I need a volunteer. Any volunteers? Volunteers. Who hasn't been up here yet? All right, come on up. Very good, very good. Okay, what I want to do is I want to show you some very successful Project 2 projects, okay? You might be surprised by what you see, but as you watch these games get played, take note of what they're doing. These Project 2 games, well, they have a very particular flavor driven by how much time and resources these teams tend to have. These teams, i.e. your teams, because Project 2 launches today, okay? So let's give it a shot, okay? I think this one is called One Button. It was made by a former EECS 494 assistant, Hannah Kawusa. Let's take a look. Some of these older Unity executables, they take like 10 seconds to load for whatever reason. Okay, come on. Oh, here we go. Okay, there you are. All right. And that's it. I see. Maybe the one thing I don't appreciate about the guidance here, try dashing after jumping kind of gives away the solution to the puzzle, doesn't it? Wow, excellent. Well done. So what do you see here? What do you notice? If you've been paying attention to the previous lectures, you'll notice a lot of things. What does the game do to teach you? Can you not get out of that?
I don't think so.
Oh, rip.
What level is this? Was I not counting?
So tell me, yes?
It teaches you one mechanic at a time what to do.
Yeah, one mechanic at a time. And does it throw you to the wolves immediately? Here's a new mechanic, and then...
No, it tells you, like, or it gives you a way to use it immediately as well.
So whenever you introduce a new idea, you always do it in a safe fashion. You can see that very clearly in the difference between the green obstacles and the red ones. The red ones kill you. The green ones do not. They just kind of bounce you back and let you try again without losing any progress. And so you can see this game is really textbook. This is a textbook P2. This is what we want. You might look at this game and say, well, it's very humble, okay? But it does everything that an excellent game wants to do. It introduces a small set of mechanics, okay? It begins combining them. When it introduces these mechanics, it always does so in a safe fashion before then raising the stakes and asking for a performance, okay? As time goes on, it introduces a few more ideas and it combines them in unique ways. It explores them from every angle. As a result, you have a game that's very easy to learn, okay, and get started with, but very difficult to master, and it's very satisfying to play, okay? So, anyway, very good. Thank you. Yes. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for from a game development production in which you only have 2 weeks. Do not forget this. You only have 2 weeks. And one of the ways you can really mess Project 2 up is by over-scoping. You will not be making an MMORPG, 10-hour adventure in the next 2 weeks. It's not going to happen. I don't care if that is your dream game. You can take the summer and try and make that if you want to. Okay? I would like another volunteer. Yes. Okay. This game is a little bit more deluxe, right? It has a bit more to it. It has audio. It has some kind of nicer aesthetics, okay? And it's a little bit longer. But like all good P2s, it has one main mechanic that it then explores fully, and it escalates in a very nice way. Just like your P1 golds, you want to escalate over time. Let's take a look at Enlighten. And I'll tell you, the controls in this game are extremely sensitive, okay? So don't worry if you run off the cliff. It happens to everyone who plays this. Just-in-time controls. Right? You only get the controls. You only get the controls at the exact first moment you need. Not too soon, not too late. How many of you have ever seen a mirror light puzzle in a game? This is a very common thing. Okay, so why would this game get full score for something that is so common and already been done? Where does the novelty come from? Well, it's coming. Just wait, okay? You notice the escalation that's happening. First couple puzzles, ultra simple, okay? Just a couple mirrors or maybe none. Now we have quite a few mirrors. You have to think about which ones you care about, how you will rotate them and set them up. Sometimes the light pattern you pick is in your way, so you actually have to platform over it. Something I want you to notice. Is this just a series of puzzle rooms that you warp to one after another? No. In this puzzle game, every puzzle is connected in a continuous world. As you complete puzzles, you do not feel as if you're just going from room to room. You feel like you're actually traveling, actually exploring. Okay? What is the innovation in this puzzle? What is the escalation? What has changed? Yes. Yeah, now you have two. You have two emitters and two panels you need to hit. They are separated by elevation, so what you have here is basically two independent puzzles. Another thing to notice, look down to your right. What do you see? You see the previous puzzles that you solved. You can get a better sense of how far you've come and the progress that you're making. It's very satisfying. What is the innovation in this stage? There is only one emitter for 2 panels. There are no other light and mirror games that have this kind of puzzle. There's something different about this light and mirror game design as opposed to things you've seen in the past. What is it? What is different? Yeah. The light moves slower. The light moves much slower, and this has an implication. The other way. Notice the game does some dynamic difficulty adjustment. If it notices that you're getting stuck on certain puzzles, like a lot of its playtesters did, then it will make changes. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So here we have a P2 game that is a little bit more substantial than the previous one. By the way, I'm sorry. I for whatever reason, they went and hid the microphone, so I can't quite use them today. But I'll try and project without losing my voice. We have here a fantastic P2. It is fairly substantial. You can play it for upwards of 5 minutes. And it has one core mechanic that it escalates perfectly, okay? It introduces it in the most simple way. It introduces its control scheme, which is a very touchy control scheme, just as it is needed, okay? It does not overload you with a bunch of text and instructions for mechanics that you don't care about yet. No, it waits until you get to certain parts of the game, and then it introduces things just as you need them. It takes a very common trope of game design, the light direction and mirror puzzles, okay? You've got a beam of light, change the mirrors, right, to get it going where you want. You will see those in tons of puzzle games if you start playing them. But it twists it just a tiny bit, and that makes a huge difference. Players don't notice this right away, but the light moves much more slowly, okay, than normal, which means you can trap it, okay? You can actually trap it, or you can redirect the light to accomplish things that in other games would be impossible. So you have 2 panels, right? You've got 2 panels and you've got 1 emitter. How do you possibly hit both panels with 1 emitter? Well, because the light moves slower than normal, you can cut it off and redirect it and all that good stuff. I couldn't find the... No, because the batteries have gone missing and the charger isn't on the desk anymore. Does it just work? On Monday...
Battery in there working just fine.
Oh, fantastic. On Monday it did not. Okay, thank you. All right. So, our mission today is going to be to introduce Project 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. Turn it on. Yep. There we go. Thank you. Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Very good. Thank you a lot. Okay, so our mission today is going to be to introduce your Project 2. The time has come. And we have 2 weeks to finish Project 2, and then you get to go off on your spring break, all right? And so let's go ahead and get into that. If you want a controller for Project 2, we have a handful of Xbox controllers that we can check out to you. In general, you may assume that the graders have a controller and they're able to grade controller-based games. What else do I have to say here? So peer evals, right, that you submit for your postmortem. Remember, you are doing your P1 postmortem right now. Make sure you don't forget about that. That's going to be due on Monday. But you're going to submit peer evals for that, and that is some of the information we use to launch investigations. If you've got someone on your team who's been freeloading, then we're going to find them, and we're going to make sure they fail the course, okay? So a reminder, please do not do that. If you have some reason you cannot participate on projects or contribute to projects the way you want to, the way your team needs you to, that happens sometimes. You get sick, you have interviews one week, you have to travel. Make sure you're talking with your team members and keeping them up to date so that they understand. If they give you good scores, you won't get investigated at all. It won't be a problem, okay? But if you're not being congenial, if you're not putting forward a good effort to your team members, then that could be a very big problem for you, okay? Especially if you need this course to graduate. So make sure you're doing the best job you can and let people know when that becomes impossible, all right? Okay, human Tetris. Have any of you ever seen this right here? So a pretty fun, right, comedic kind of live action reality show kind of game or game show kind of game, right? The mission here is to quickly kind of contort yourself into a position to get through this wall. And sometimes the poses you have to take on are quite funny and not super suiting for the person, right? So he's a bit tall to make this work. But one of the best ways that you can exercise your game design muscles is to go in and when you look at a game like this, try and do mental transformations on it, okay? So what I would like to do here is I'd like you to think about this game, Human Tetris, and make a mental transformation on it and see what happens. The transformation that I want you to make in your head is that now there's no time limit. Now, the player gets to take as much time as they want in order to kind of size things up. And then when they're ready, they can make a call and then the wall starts coming. They can see the wall, okay? They get to choose when it starts coming. How does the game's design, or rather, how does its outcome change? What is the change in the game's feel? How does it change the player's experience? Does it feel more strategic, less? What's the situation? Yes?
It's more strategic.
Okay, why?
They have the time to now set up versus like it being like a fun game show. Now there's like actual stakes, and now they have the time to actually be in a position to probably take it more seriously.
Okay, so there's more time, right? So there might be more discussion, right? Maybe the talking heads, the announcers might try and debate while the player sets up and figures out their strategy. There could be some drama, some more tension, right? Because there's a little bit more time being taken, okay? What else? Anyone? So I generally agree. I don't think the stakes have raised much, but I do think it is much more strategic now, okay? The player now is going to rely less on their physical reflexes, and you get a better sense for the player's sense of strategy and long-term planning. So it definitely changed the feel. Does the game get worse or does it improve? Well, that's a hard question. What does it mean for a game to be good? Right? So it depends on what the designer is seeking. All right? So I've got another question for you. In this game, when you get wrecked, when you fail a challenge, you get pushed into the water. Okay? So I'm making another change. Let's make a change to the game. Now, that no longer happens. Now, when the wall comes, it detects that it has touched you, and everything just stops. The wall halts and it backs off, and that's it. Okay? So how has the game changed now?
It's gotten more boring and less fun.
It's gotten more boring and less fun, right? These notions of boring and fun are kind of nebulous, right? So what do you mean when you say less fun?
There's no consequences now. Like, right now the consequence of failing is just like fun splash. It's like, oh, what
Okay.
happens? But if
Yeah.
you just like stop, it's like, oh wow, nothing happened.
Okay, right? So the stakes have changed here. Absolutely. So now there's a little bit less punishment for messing up, right? You suffer a bit of indignity, but not nearly as much as getting pushed into the water, okay? Thankfully, no one is getting hurt in either case, unless you really, really, really cannot swim at all. Right? The water here makes it very, very clear what has happened. If the wall just kind of touches you and things just kind of halt, like, was that good? Was that bad? You think, well, it's probably not good. It's a little bit bad, but was it really bad? No, when you get thrown in the water, you know that something very bad has happened. That is a negative outcome in pretty much every circumstance. As a result, this is what we call juice. The game state is very, very clear if you get thrown into the water. If you don't, it's a bit less clear, okay? And it's much less playful, much less visceral and charming if you remove something like this, okay? But logistically speaking, that could speed up the game and its filming process, and so maybe that's still a choice that you make, okay? Sean, can you turn your sound off? There's a lecture, right? Thank you. Okay, so what I recommend to you is when you play games or when you watch games, try and do these little mental transformations to them. Add little things, remove them, and try and simulate what happens. How does the experience change? Okay? And that will exercise your game design muscles over time. Very often these days, right, you might find yourself playing another game, an itch.io game or a Steam game or a AAA game, and find yourself asking, I wish they did this. Right? I wish they did A, I wish they did B, or I don't like C that they're currently doing. I wish they hadn't done it, or they had made the section shorter. Okay? The more you find yourself doing that, the more of a game designer you know you are. Okay? I encourage you to do so. So there have been a bunch of assignments released, P2 Gold Spike, P2 Research, and P2 Project Management. If you look at the schedule, you can see that it's a pretty impactful day right now. We're going to go over all of these assignments and what they mean in just a moment. And if you haven't finished it yet, that P1 postmortem is still something you should be working on, okay? One thing that makes P2 really freeing and fun is that it's only you on this project. You've got 2 weeks entirely to yourself to make, for the most part, whatever weird, wacky game design idea you happen to have, okay? And if you don't have an idea, we'll talk a little bit about ideation possibly on Monday, okay? But maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that today as well. But one thing that makes this project a bit hard is that, again, you only have one person on your team, okay? And so you're going to have to carry a little bit more of the load than last time. But as you've seen from these P2 demo games, you don't have to do nearly as much. And you get to choose the scope of the things that you are doing, okay? And so, all right, I think most people really, really enjoy these assignments, okay? A quick note on the P2 project management assignment, you create your tasks now. And yes, you do need to have your own Jira website. Why do you need to have your own Jira site for a one-person project? We want you to practice and get more familiar with the UI because it's going to be super useful on P3 when you don't have 2 people to manage, or 1, you have 4 or 5, okay? And a ton of tasks every week, all right? So let's go ahead and let's talk about this P2 project, okay, and get it rolling. Anyone remember what this game is? I can't remember if I showed this to you or not. Has anyone seen this game before? You have likely heard of it, okay? This is a very famous game. It's known as Braid, okay? And this is the final version when Jonathan Blow, the main programmer and designer, finally decided to team up with an artist, okay? Jonathan Blow would eventually hire on an artist and hire on a musician or license musical tracks in order to make the game really, really polished, okay? But this is what the game was in its early form, and you can kind of tell, right? This is a game led by an engineer at heart because, right, there's a lot of programmer art. It was made really fast and efficiently, okay? It doesn't look super luxurious yet, all right? But it's functional enough, okay? Anyone know who August Browning is? He works at Riot Games. He came to our EECS 494 lecture a couple of years ago, and you know, he had some wisdom to share from Riot Games. Does anyone play League of Legends or any of their stuff? Okay, so August is famous for designing one of the characters, and one of the more obscure characters. I believe her name is Jinx. Right? Has anyone heard of her? Okay, so. He is very much in this process of iteration, and at Riot Games, they do a lot of that, right? The wisdom he had to share with our course was essentially this. You really want to do a lot of iteration, a lot of prototyping. You make small things so that you can kind of nail down your big decisions before things get really, really expensive, okay? What do I mean? Well, when your characters look like this and have no animation, they're just a still frame, how expensive is it to say, you know what, I don't want this character anymore, I want a different character, right? How expensive is that? What is the cost to Jonathan Blow if he decides he wants a character that maybe is actually a robot because it has a jetpack now? Yeah, a couple minutes, right? I would probably say maybe an hour or two, right? Because he has to draw something up and then he has to maybe program some additional functionality, hover functionality, stuff like that. But the development cost is extraordinarily cheap at this stage. If he wants to change anything, he can do so. He doesn't have to ask permission or talk to anyone. He doesn't have to rehire a bunch of new assets to get done, okay? Things are exceptionally cheap. And so this is the phase where ideas can come and go and be super flexible, right? You're trying to find out what works. But no one wants to play this game. People want to play this game. So at some point, you have to lock things down, and that's when everything gets super expensive to change, okay? Right now, anyone playing Civilization 7? Civilization. Anyone play Civ at all? The series, you've heard of it, right? So Civilization 7 is having a bit of a problem at the moment. Its reviews are mixed, and this is a lot of reviews, right? The game's selling millions of copies. Unfortunately, it's selling way less than its previous games, okay? Which is not what you really want to see. This game is in a finalized, polished state. You can see the graphics are very nice, right? Changing anything in this game is going to be kind of tough. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more effort. One huge problem this game has is its UI, right? A lot of the reviews, a lot of the user reviews state that the game has a very clunky, very kind of time-intensive UI. It's very inconvenient and not very nice to use. And this is a game where UI is extremely important, okay? And so, hey, there's Sid. Yay. Yeah, you watched the video on him just a little bit ago, right? Just at the last lecture. In any case, it's tough to make fixes at this stage for Civilization 7. They're going to try and do it, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to do so. All right, because they've gotten to this final stage and things just aren't good enough, all right? So what you have here with Braid, what we see is a project that took several months to make. okay, and only one person, evolving into a game that took 2 years to make, and it took, over $100,000. I can't remember exactly what Jonathan Blow did. Like, I think maybe it was another team, but I think he put a remortgage on his house or something to get 100K. He took a lot of risks to get 100K so he could pay the artists and the musicians to create this amazing polished experience. He did that because he knew the game was fantastically fun. It was really exciting. People loved the game when it was in this state. The prototype was doing extremely well. And so it was risky, but not as risky as one might think, okay, to go and put all those resources in, all right? These two phases of Braid map pretty clearly to your two final remaining projects, okay? Your project 2 is going to be a rapid prototype project. You only have 2 weeks. You only have one person on your team. The amount of points at stake is much lower, and changing things is going to be much easier for you, okay? There are no teammates you have to talk to and convince if you want to add a new mechanic or change how something works. The games are expected to have super basic aesthetics, and so, changing something or adding a new character to the game could be as simple as spawning a cube, giving it a new material, and then you got a new character in the game. It's a cube, okay? There we go. However, that is very soon going to give way, after spring break, to your final project, which will have not one person, but 4 or 5 on the team. Not 2 weeks, but about 7 weeks, okay? And lots of playtests, and many more points at stake. And so you want to be careful. And by the way, if you're wondering, yes, you can take your project 2 and it can become the starting point of project 3 if you want it to. But know that every team will have 4 or 5 project 2s to choose from. And so what usually ends up happening is that your project 3 is a combination of the elements of your various project 2s. Okay? Very rarely does one project 2 wholesale become the starting point for a team's project 3. Okay? But sometimes it does happen if a P2 is just fantastic, okay, and the entire team really likes it. Okay, so that's what you're going to be doing, all right? You're going to be rapidly prototyping over the next 2 weeks. Here are your important dates, okay? You've got today, the 12th, you've got the 19th in a week, and then a week after, you have the 26th. Like all the projects in this course, you have engineering things you're focusing on, you have design things you're focusing on, and business things as well, okay? / production. What you care about right now is your P2 gold spike, okay? Now notice this is not P2 gold, it's a gold spike. What on earth does that mean? Let me show you something, okay? Has anyone heard of a doomed game called Mass Effect Andromeda? Okay, so Mass Effect Andromeda, look at all these videos, and in particular it has a What Happened documentary on it. If you haven't ever checked out this channel, it is a channel dedicated to about 20-minute mini documentaries that go over a game's production, particularly when the production went wrong, okay? Mass Effect Andromeda was a game that was from Electronic Arts, and it was kind of aiming for the same vibe as a No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky, an infinite procedurally generated game where you can travel to a bunch of planets and things are going to be really, really cool and interesting and novel, even for the devs, because it is procedurally generated. They didn't handcraft it. And the Mass Effect Andromeda team spent, I think 2 or 3 years working on this procedural generation technology. Okay, and they spent a lot of time on the game. They had about 4 or 5 years to finish the game, allocated by EA. And they did a bunch of stuff, but at year 3, they discovered something. You know what they found out? Their procedural generation technology doesn't work. The game is not any fun. So in year 3, having spent over half of their resources, they discover that the core element of their game that everything hinges on isn't fun. It doesn't work. Uh-oh. That ship is going down. Okay? And so the final game that you see was actually a pivot. Halfway through, they decided, oops, our entire approach is wrong. We need to correct course. And they only had a year or two to finish an entire game and handcraft it and try and get it to a high quality level, which they failed at. Of course they did. They only had a year or two. All right? They burned the rest of their time and resources. What's a different approach that they could have taken? Yeah. It's okay if you find out that the core of your game doesn't work, and you find this out after 6 months, okay? Because if you pivot after 6 months, you still have 4.5 years, okay? That's fine, okay? That's just okay. That's no big deal. Their problem, though, is that they didn't focus hard enough on their most important technologies and their most important mechanics. They kind of delayed them, and they only discovered halfway through that what they were going for was not going to work, okay? And so, what is a gold spike? The question I asked earlier, what is a gold spike? It is the most important technological or design element in your game. It's the thing that you care about most. It's the thing that everything hinges on, okay? This week, you are going to focus on your core mechanic, probably. That is probably your gold spike, okay? And you're going to create a tech demo for that mechanic, okay? And that is what we're going to play test on next Wednesday, okay? We're all going to walk around and we're going to be checking out what your gold spike mechanic is, all right? And we'll be commenting on it. If your gold spike mechanic is a disaster, this leaves you an extra week to fix things up and to pivot if you need to, all right? So keep that in mind. When you start a new risky project, your first goal is to prototype the scariest, hardest things in your design. Why? It's because if you discover that you just can't make them work or they're infeasible for some reason, you still have a ton of time and resources to pivot and do something else, okay? You do not want to discover that nothing works in the 11th hour. In that case, you're just doomed, okay? So anyway, P2 Gold Spike, when you look at this assignment spec, basically it's relatively simple. It explains what a gold spike is. It kind of reminds you of the event bus / pub sub design pattern, and which we're going to talk about today more. And it basically just has you, write out what your gold spike is going to be, and then that's it, okay? You need to have that gold spike prototyped in a, reasonable way. You need to have a little bit of content so that we can see what your gold spike can do and why it is important. And you need to have a complete game loop for this week. What is a complete game loop? You can play the game and then restart the game without exiting the process or using a cheat code, okay? It could be as simple as, you get killed and you go back to the beginning, or you get to the end of this level and you can press the space bar to go and do it again. Okay? That's it. That's a complete game loop. You will then spend the following week filling that game loop, making it larger and more full of ideas and guidance. Okay? It's pretty simple. So let's keep going. You'll have 1 week to kind of prototype your mechanic, and then you'll have a second week to kind of polish things up. How long does my game need to be? The same exact answer we gave to P1 Gold. You need to take your mechanics, you need to explore them from many different angles, okay? How long does your game need to be? That kind of depends on your mechanic, okay? Typically, though, we will end up playing a P2 for around 3 to 6 minutes, okay? Not super long, usually. And you probably got a feel for how long P2s tend to be when they're doing a great job on the games I just showed, okay? And I'll show you another in just a moment. You have a P2 research that you are doing as well, all right? This P2 research assignment is kind of similar to the P1 research, but there's a massive difference. On P1 research, you had a bunch of games that already exist, okay? You took Zelda or you took Metroid and you compared it to 3 other classic games, okay? Does your P2 game exist?
It's not supposed to.
No. If it already exists, we definitely have some honor code stuff we got to talk about, okay? You are starting a new game, just to clarify. You're not using a game that already exists. So you do not have a P2 that already exists, and your ideas are going to be in flux during this week and the next. And so you cannot compare it to other games that exist. It would not make any sense. So instead, what this P2 research assignment has you do, just read the spec. It'll tell you, okay, identify the genre that you are likely to be in. I am making a platformer game. Thus, you can then go out and you can find 3 platformer games, and you're going to compare those platformer games to each other, okay? Not to your game that does not exist. That doesn't make sense, okay? Every semester, someone gets a 0 because they try comparing 3 games that exist to their game that's in their head. And that's not what we're asking for. And if you do this and misread the spec, you're going to get wrecked, okay? That's how it goes if you don't pay attention. P2 project management, okay? It's another JIRA assignment. It works much in the same way as your first one. Just make sure that you are keeping track of your time. Make sure you're logging work. Another reason you want to do this is so that you can slowly get better at estimating time, okay? As you learn Unity, as you learn more about yourself and how fast you move on certain things, you'll get better at making these time estimates, and you can make much better planning on projects like P3, okay? So that's why we care about that, all right? At the very end, you'll have a P2 postmortem. It's pretty much the exact same as the P1 postmortem, and you're going to have a lot of time to do it, okay? Another thing not here is you have spring break, right? If you are feeling a bit fatigued, do not worry. Spring break is on the way, and you will not have anything to do except for that P2 postmortem during the spring break, okay? And you can actually get the P2 postmortem done easily before spring break starts, and we hope you'll do that. So you can rest up and enjoy that long week to get ready for Project 3 and that final sprint, okay? All right, so some final things to say about P2, okay? These are, again, teams of 1, all right? And that's a very freeing experience. But I'll say that when a team is working well, it is the most exciting and impactful thing in the world, okay? It is really glorious to take a team that is performing much more than the sum of its parts, okay? But teams can also underperform the sum of their parts, okay? If you have teams that have a lot of friction or teams that are not working well together, then that can be a big problem. So enjoy this 2-week opportunity to be on a team of 1, okay? It's not usually a team of 1 that has a lot of impact, okay? Even teams like the Undertale team has a super prominent developer, Toby Fox, right? That's a 1-person team, right? No, definitely not. Okay, if you watch the credits of Undertale, you'll find a ton of people contributed a lot of things to make that game happen. And that's typically what you find, okay? But teams of 1 can be extremely experimental and can find interesting new ideas, okay? I think the Five Nights at Freddy's team was mostly a team of 1, but Scott Cawthon had a lot of playtesters, members of his family who were helping him out a lot and supporting him during that time. So no one makes a game alone, okay? Keep that in mind. The focus here is on novelty, okay? What does novelty mean? How do I possibly make something new? Well, there are hundreds, thousands of games coming out every single day. It's very hard to make something that has genuinely never been done before. Sometimes you don't even know if you're doing it or not. But what you can almost always do is you can take existing concepts and you can try and combine them in a unique way. And you can achieve a lot of novelty by doing that, okay? Often you can take something that already exists, but you can put a new flavor or new spin or spice on it. And you can get novelty that way. So do the best you can. I know that you can't play every game in existence to know if what you're doing is super novel. But if you're ever worried, you can come to office hours, and I'll be happy to point you to other games that do something similar so that you can zig where they zagged, okay? That'll help you out. P2, very big focus on applying the things you've recently learned in lecture. So interesting decisions, right? Player guidance. If you need to revisit those lectures, watch the lecture recordings again, remind yourself about what we care about, because that's how you're going to be graded on this project, okay? On P2 Gold Spike, you're not going to be graded on those things. On P2 Gold, you very heavily will be, okay? And then on P3, every week you'll be graded on that stuff, all right? Focus on guidance in particular. How do you teach players in a nice escalating way how to deal with your game's mechanics, okay? Are you doing too much hand-holding, okay? Are you giving away the eureka moment that you really want your players to achieve themselves, okay? Our mission as a designer is to make it very likely that players will discover things by themselves and accomplish and overcome these challenges and learn more about the mechanics, but also more about themselves by playing. Okay, our mission is not to hand-hold them so that they can check every box so that they can get through to the ending, all right? So it's a really fine line, and you want to be achieving elegance in your guidance, okay? And also, we're going to focus on design patterns, okay? Having a better code base. Decentralized versus centralized problems, okay? Do we use small components to solve this, or do we use a centralized manager to solve this, okay? Today, we're going to introduce a design pattern that is everyone's favorite in the course. We don't really cover Observer anymore because Observer is made kind of obsolete by PubSub, which is what we will cover today, okay? But yeah, this is your chance to start a fresh new code base, okay? There's no teammate that's going to get in there and write code you don't understand. This is all you. And so take that opportunity to apply what you know now, okay? P2 Gold Spike has some restrictions on it, all right? So no game in this course may support more than 2-player multiplayer. And this is where I know that quite a few of us just aren't watching lecture or paying much attention to the content because we've got people asking questions about multiplayer, right? It's always limited to 2. If you're curious about why this is the case, it's a logistical problem. We only have a staff of 4, and we could, in the past, we graded 4-player games. All of us have to grade together, okay? Most of the games were 4-player, and that led to about 10 hours grading sessions every single week. That is like having an exam to grade every single week. Not possible when we've got other courses to teach and grade, like 440 and 298 and 498 Game Engine Architecture. So this is simply the way it has to be. Sometimes teams will take their 2-player game, and after the semester ends, they will then upgrade it during the summer, for instance, to a 4-player game or online multiplayer, okay? And that's just fine. All games, so this is no longer required. This is pandemic era. All games must support either a mouse and keyboard or Xbox controller, or both, right? You can do whatever you want there. Do not support DDR dance pad, okay? Do not make that the only way to play your game. We might not have a DDR dance pad. We can't grade your game. You get a 0, okay? Online multiplayer is forbidden, all right? If you're curious why this policy exists, it existed as a result of my team's performance in EECS 494. We were one of the first games in EECS 494, my team, my Project 3 team, to ever introduce online multiplayer. It was a kind of a cool game. I'll show you it more in a future lecture. But it was called Hell Spells. It was a cooperative 4-player, kind of wizard and witch themed survival game. And you would team up with your 3 friends, and you would run around and try and defeat a bunch of skeletons and spooky monsters coming in. You would select your spells. Some spells were super cool. We had a clothesline spell where you activate it, and your nearest friend, you get a beam of energy with your nearest friend, and you can kind of run around enemies to clothesline them. Super fun. The problem, though, is that our game's design, its overall structure was very undercooked. It was very basic, And that's because we had to spend all of our time fixing synchronization issues and various multiplayer bugs. It's very easy these days to get multiplayer going, but very hard to make it fully polished and stable. And that's where all of your time will go on your team, in our experience, if you do multiplayer. So I am working on a new course design that would be all about multiplayer, but that's not here yet, okay? So no online multiplayer in this course. You can always add it later if you want to. Minigame collections are not allowed, okay? It's hard enough to make one game that is polished and well-guided and interesting, let alone 10, okay? So no minigame collections. All right, some tips, okay? Make use of your open public resources, okay? OpenGameArt.org, freesound.org, Sketchfab, right, for 3D models. You can do whatever you'd like to do, okay? Just remember that in this course, you always need to tell us if you didn't make something, okay? You've got a credits.txt, put that in the top of your repo so we can find it, and you're good, okay? Also, you need to make sure you have a license. So do not just grab an image of Mario. Do not just grab a Sketchfab 3D model of Mario and put it into your game, okay? Other courses allow that. They're not quite as intensive and serious and rigorous as 494 is. And so please do not do that in your project. If we notice you've done it, we'll just tell you to remove it or fix it. But if you keep it in there, then you'll start losing lots of points, okay? All right, yep, so freesound.org is a good one. Sketchfab is a really good one. Lots of 3D models on there, many of them downloadable. It's good stuff, okay? So does anyone have any questions on Project 2? The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one more P2 game. And this might be one of my favorites, okay? It is super simple, but it is also super elegant in how it escalates and how it explores its one main mechanic. Okay, I'm going to start playing this game, and I want you to tell me what the main mechanic is, okay? This is Guru Guru by Chinli Yi, and let's give it a shot. Oh, did I grab the wrong thing? Oh, yes, I grabbed his name. Here's the link. Now, some guidance I don't like here. You should not need a how to play button, right? And in this game, it isn't necessary either. Okay, walking around. I'm pressing spacebar to jump, but then I press X. Actually, wait a second. Shift, sorry. I press Shift, and do you see what happened? I can dash. And in particular, when I dash into a wall, what happens? I rotate the entire world. You must learn this mechanic, and you must use it to move on. You cannot escape this level without using it. And so after this level, the game designer knows, okay, my player understands this mechanic at a basic level. Okay? When I touch this white block, I get a little sound effect, and I get some confetti, okay? And that helps me understand that, hey, I just succeeded, I won the level. That is juice. We're going to talk more about juice on Monday, okay? We'll start implementing some of it so you can have it in your P2s. You will need to have it in your P2, okay? Look at this. It's a new idea. What is the new idea that this stage introduces? Yeah, there are obstacles here, these spikes. The spike is blocking me from getting to this exit, okay? There's also an obstacle that jumps whenever I jump, okay? And so, let's deal with this, okay? These obstacles, these enemies are affected by the same rotation that affects me, okay? So I can resolve my problems by rotating a few times. And so now you've learned that rotating isn't just about traversal. You can also manipulate things in the environment via rotation, okay? So what do we do now? Well, this is the first stage that introduces spike floors. These are massive obstacles you have to be careful about, okay? All right? Sometimes you have to be careful about things falling and landing on top of you. Okay? What is new about this stage? Every stage is bringing in something slightly new, okay? Exploring these ideas in a slightly new way. Yeah.
It's a lot bigger floating platform.
Yeah, this is a much larger stage and it has floating platforms, okay? And so you have to kind of think, okay, how do I want to move around? Do I want to drop down here or do I want to hit this? Right now I'm going to drop down here. Now what should I hit? Should I try and land on this or can I do this? Oops. This also has very slippery controls. Okay. Okay. Okay, now I can do this. Okay, much safer that way. Okay, let's go over here. Let's do this, right? You have to be a bit careful about things falling on you. What is this stage about? What is this stage teaching us? Yes, this is the first stage that has very obvious fall damage. It's also teaching us that sometimes you have to have quick reflexes. This is the first stage in which this game feels not like a puzzle game, but an action game, okay? And so we can hit shift and we can kind of save ourselves mid-fall. And that's kind of a cool mechanic, a cool idea. Here's a second time we're going to have to do that, okay? Some more practice. By the way, this stage opens up with us just kind of dying over and over and over, okay? One of our game design axioms is that you don't want to punish the player for things they couldn't see coming. Remember Mickey's Dangerous Chase, right? You're going up the building, and if you go left, you just die, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Why is it not a big deal here if we're just dying over and over? Yeah, there's almost no penalty to dying, right? You get the little sad sound effect and some little blood particles go flying. But about 1 second later, you're back into it and you're trying again. You've lost almost no progress at all. And so the stakes are very low. And so the game encourages experimentation that way. And it also reduces the pain of failure, okay? Okay, so we're going ahead. All right, now how do we want to deal with this right here? Okay, I think there are a couple ways you could deal with this, but I think I'm going to go, oops, no, I messed that up. It's a bit of a troll move that you start right next to the goal, right, and you fall away from it. Now we have to get back there, right? So let's see. How do I do this? Okay, do this. Okay. Notice how the stage is in a much different orientation now, right? So I got to my goal in a much different way. So I guess that's another thing that you can be taught. The way that you approach the goal will determine how difficult it is to actually get in there. Okay, let's try this and this. Okay, let's see, what do we want to do here? Can I land on that? Like that? There we go. Okay. So the stages are beginning to combine these ideas from the action genre with ideas from our puzzle gameplay. Oh, did I pass that? No, I didn't. I got killed and succeeded at the same time, and that is not considered a win. Oh. Okay. Can I do something over here? Or is that just the beginning of... Oh, there we go. Yeah, that was perfect. Okay. So this is one of my favorite P2s ever. Okay? And just get a feel for it. Right? Its aesthetics are very simple, but they're still there. Do you see these eyes on your character? Right? It is useful to know what direction I moved in last. Which direction will I go when I press that dash button? The eyes help me understand that, right? They give directionality to my character, okay? So every level, super simple aesthetics, and every level introduces some sort of new idea, some sort of new angle to view these central mechanics on. It's not really introducing big new mechanics every stage. It's using the ones it already has in a very interesting way. This is to say, during this project, you're going to spend a lot of time thinking, okay? Go for it.
So in that last level, you like blindly, I guess, dash to the wall saying like, oh, can I go here?
Yeah.
I guess, I wonder, like, especially in puzzle games or puzzle games, what's the difference between guidance, that's kind of guidance, and also just playing the game?
Yes. So experimentation is one way that a player can kind of guide themselves and move through a stage and explore it and enjoy it. Guidance is trying to increase the chances that they make the right choice. Failures in guidance are very, very visible when, for instance, you've got your P1 Gold custom level, you're watching a friend play it, and they're just kind of going back and forth, and they eventually say the dooming words, those fateful words, "What do I do? What do I do?" Maybe they're saying, "What do I do?" because there's a button on the keyboard that does something with an item, and you forgot to tell them. Okay? You don't have to tell them what it does, but you do need to prompt them, make it likely that they will press the button and discover it on their own. Or maybe the player got to "what do I do?" by, unfortunately, just not noticing a key that was on the ground, and they walked past it, and now they're confused. I need a key, but there are no keys. Well, you walked past the key. Why did they walk past the key? Because the key was gray and the floor is gray. So maybe the lighting conditions on their laptop, there's some glare, they walked past it, or they were, just not super focused. Maybe they were a little bit drunk or something. Who knows? A lot of people play games when they're and enjoy alcohol, right, at the same time. That's guidance, okay? A project like this does a great job with guidance because it escalates in a way that forces you to learn a tiny little bit at once, not too much at once. And it also makes it really easy to experiment and try many different things. And so it's likely that you'll eventually try a thing that works and you'll learn from that, okay? So guidance, really good guidance, does not always mean you have to do a lot of work, okay? Sometimes it means just being clever about how you present things and how you order things, okay? All right. Any other questions, comments? You make a game like this, you're going to have a fantastic score on P2. Yes?
Was it like progression and like they're getting for in progression, but in other genres,
Imagine that you have a first-person shooter. You're making a game like Halo, okay? Imagine that the first stage decides, wow, we've got all these great enemy types in our game. I'm going to make the first room have a grunt and an elite and a bigger character. And by the way, I'm also going to have one of those gigantic scorpion mechs show up too. That's a really, really poor guidance. Why? You can already imagine what's going to happen to the newbie player when suddenly they're in a room full of unique enemies. You can also imagine that, I'm just going to take every weapon that I have in this game and I'm going to throw them in on the side, to help the player out, right? Because it's a big, tough fight. They need a bunch of weapons. That's a terrible idea. You do not want them learning 10 different things at once. You want them to learn one thing, learn it relatively well, and then you want to introduce new things and mix the ideas together. Okay? It's the same thing to where, what if I showed up? You showed up on the first day of 494 and I handed you the final exam. Right? That would be awful. It would be a train wreck. Okay? You wouldn't learn anything. You'd be very upset. Okay? Every failure wouldn't feel like you failed. It would feel like you were set up for failure. So in the same way that with puzzle games, we usually kind of introduce some ideas slowly but surely, explore them, and then introduce more ideas. Same thing with first-person shooter games. Same thing with other kinds of games as well. Okay, same thing with games like Overcooked. You try and introduce a new mechanic or new idea every few minutes, and you give the player some time to explore those ideas before then combining them and raising the stakes. If you want to, you can think of every game genre as a puzzle genre. The first big fight in Halo is a puzzle. You can approach it in many different ways, some more optimal than others, some easier than others, okay? You look at the situation, maybe a few times because you die it, but every time you die, you learn a little bit more. And eventually you say, I've got these types of enemies, I've got these 2 weapon types available over here that I can pick up. I'm going to pick up this one, I've got some cover, I'm going to throw a grenade, and that solves the scenario instantly instead of turning into a big firefight, right? So that's the kind of thing we're talking about in player guidance. Puzzle games are very nice for illustrating player guidance because it's just very, very clear. And often puzzle games aren't moving that fast, so we can slow things down a bit. We talked about player guidance in Left 4 Dead, using lighting to kind of pull people around. We talked about it in Kya, Dark Lineage, which is an action platformer. And so guidance is a fairly universal concept. It's so universal it applies outside of video games. Okay, it applies to Disney World, right? Using tall landmarks to try and pull players out of the center and spread them out, okay, around the park. It applies to lecture design as well. How you order things will determine whether the things you're saying are obvious and natural and they make sense, or whether they just came out of the blue. When you're designing a course and teaching lectures, one of the fateful words you might hear from a student is, will this be on the test? And if you hear this, it's because they are wondering, why is this important? Why are you teaching us this, right? And if that is the case, then our design has failed and we have to go in and tweak things and rearrange things until it's obvious why something is being talked about, right? We don't have any exams, but you might say, is this important for our P2? And I hope the answer is obvious. If I've done a good job, it will be, okay? Anyway, the biggest takeaway here, and then we'll take a break, is that your P2 need not be a big thing, okay? I would also say it's very tempting to say to yourself, oh, I'm going to plan my entire game out before I write a single line of code. I'm going to plan it all out. I'm going to plan my entire code base out. I'm going to plan all my components, okay? And then only when I've got everything perfect, I'll write code. I'll jump into the project. This is not feasible. It's not realistic, okay? If you try and plan everything out on paper, you might discover that, oh, things looked great on paper, but as soon as I made them, it didn't work out, right? It's very hard to know what you need ahead of time, okay? So what I encourage you to do is when you think about planning a game, make prototyping a part of that plan. When you're planning, you should have Unity open. When you have an idea for a new mechanic, you say to yourself, I wonder how hard it would be to program that. And then you try and program it in about 10 to 15 minutes in a very basic way. You think, yeah, I think I can actually make this, okay? I'm confident I can make this now. Programming is a part of the planning process. So please get in there, create a new project, throw that project away if you need to, but use programming to convince yourself how hard will certain things be, all right? Do not assume, as I read in a lot of your postmortems, that you can just plan everything out from the get-go. It almost never works that way, okay? All right, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Then I want to come back and I want to show you one of the most important design patterns in the course, something that will hopefully make your code base dramatically better than it was on Project 1, okay? PubSub. We'll talk about it when you come back. See you in 5.
And then the teachers do tonight, so they were all
Today's kind Yeah.
So I was just looking at my grades because I was submitting, and I noticed I didn't get credit for culture walk. Is there a place I can submit this form from?
She filled it up.
Should
yeah,
I
just email
submit that somewhere? Or
No,
email it to you?
just email me. I'll take
Should I do something?
You can if you want to, but what I'll do is I'll look up your unique name. Yeah.
Like Mark's saying it's through. And then it
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to it. So, we have an objective here. When we start P2, we want our code base to be much, much nicer than our P1's code base probably is, right? I mean, how many of you would actually be kind of excited to stay in your P1 code base? Anyone? Like, it would be a bit of a challenge to kind of refactor things, but if you're making a Zelda-like or a Metroid-like, it might not be the worst idea. I think, however, most of us would be pretty happy to kind of move on from the code base and try and keep things a bit more clean. But this question of, well, what is a good code base? What does it mean to be clean? Okay, what do these things mean? Well, it's the kind of topic that you'll get a much better feel for as you program more, as you get involved with more projects, bigger projects, smaller projects, okay, team projects. You'll get a much better feel for what it means to have a high-quality code base. But here's something that will help you, okay? One measure of the quality of a code base is how much coupling exists and how much sense does that coupling make, okay? This is our Flappy Bird project. This is the project that we spent a good bit of time on doing a toast system. Do you remember the toast system? So the toast system basically was a messaging system that allowed us to send a message to our user at any time. It looked kind of like this. You would get a new score, and if it's a high score, it would come down from the top and alert you to this new high score. But we could also use this for any sort of message. So if a connection issue occurred, we could have it come down and say, hey, connection is unstable, or something like that, okay? You could even theoretically use it as a kind of guidance system so that when the player walks to a certain area, oh, we need to tell them what button to press to try out the new mechanic, so bring it down and tell them, okay? However, the way we implemented this was pretty good, but it had a problem. In this gamecontrol.cs script, we have our score. This is where a lot of our scoring logic happens. And if we want to send a toast to our user, we run a line of code like this. Toast manager.request toast. We send in a new toast request with the message and a color for that request, okay? And that worked out pretty well for us. But you can see here that there's a bit of a problem right now. We've moved to Flappy Bird 2, okay? And we've brought this code over because, you know, it worked well on Flappy Bird 1, and we want to reuse it. But one thing we didn't bring over was the toast manager, okay? And so now our code doesn't work. We have to change our code in order to fix it up, okay? Not a big deal in this case because it's just deleting one line of code, right? But in larger projects, you'll find that you will have a lot more of these, okay? Various requests and calls that hard couple one system to many other systems. In this case, the question should be, why is our centralized gameplay logic hard coupled to a piece of UI? We should be able to get rid of that UI system and everything should just continue to work, right? If our code base is well made, well architected, there is not going to be this hard coupling, okay? I should be able to just take all this code, put it in a new project, and boom, it just immediately works, okay? But it doesn't. So this code is mediocre, okay? Not bad, but it could be better, all right? It could be much more portable. We could have much better coupling, i.e. less coupling, okay? So the question that I posed to you when we ended the toast lecture, okay, was how can you allow this system, the game control system, to communicate with the toast manager system without them referencing each other? It seems almost impossible, right? How could you do this? Do any of you actually know? It's a technique that is kind of interesting. It's actually something that is very well known and very popular when you get to larger pieces of software. Enterprise software loves to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to use a pattern called the event bus pattern, sometimes also called PubSub for publisher subscriber. You also sometimes hear this referred to as event-based programming, okay? And here is kind of how it's going to work, all right? Here's kind of sort of how it works. I want you to imagine right now that we have two systems that exist, a UI system and a toast system. Both of these systems reference a player system, okay? The player system manages our players and stuff like that. The UI system, you can see right here, it references the player system. It is hard coupled to the player system. In this case, whenever this event on player scored happens, it will run this function, okay? So we've got two systems here. They both clearly reference the player system, okay? They're subscribing to it, in other words. The player system does not care about either of these systems at all. It doesn't reference them. If you delete these two systems, everything still works. The player system that remains doesn't care about these two. But if you delete the player system, these two systems break, okay, and can no longer function. That's not great. That's hard coupling in one direction, okay? So, yeah, what happens if player system disappears from the code base? I kind of just said it, but what happens if player system just vanishes? We decided we don't want it. Now we've got player system 2. Okay, what happens? Yeah.
Stops building.
Yeah, it stops compiling, right? We have to go in and fix a ton of things, all right? So toast system and UI system have a hard dependency, a hard coupling to player system, and this is the beginnings of spaghetti, okay? You don't usually want this, all right? At least you don't want a ton of it, okay? So what can we do? Well, I'm going to delete these dependencies. You see, I just deleted them, right? Now, these two systems no longer reference player system at all. However, they can't do their job. They need to know when a player has scored, okay? So how do we patch things back up? Well, here's what we're going to do. This is the key to it all. We're going to introduce a standardized middleman, an event bus, okay? An event bus that is going to be responsible for passing things around. Here's how it's going to work, okay? The player system, when it wants to say that someone has scored, okay? Someone scores in the game. The player system is going to run this line of code, eventbus.publish. What are you publishing? Well, I'm publishing an object right here of type score event. And in particular, I'm creating a new score event, and the new score is 2, okay? And this object is going to get passed into the event bus, okay? This event bus, okay, is going to then pass that event on to the UI system and the toast system. Notice here that the UI system has told the event bus that, hey, I want to subscribe to any score event that you get, okay? And by the way, when a score event comes through, I want to process it with this function called _scored, okay? The event comes through here, we do things with the event. For instance, we might update some text, okay? Now the toast system wants to check if there's a high score and maybe send a toast through, right? And so it is also going to subscribe to the score event type, and it's going to use a scored function to process that event as it comes through and check if there's a high score and send a toast if there is, okay? Now notice what has happened here. Tell me this, what systems is the player system hard coupled to? Yes, the event bus, bingo, okay? The player system depends upon the event bus. It has to exist, okay? What other systems is the UI system hard coupled to?
The event bus.
Yeah, the event bus. If that event bus is deleted from our code base, this line of code means nothing. It fails. It doesn't compile anymore, okay? Same thing with the toast system, right? It is hard coupled to the event bus as well. But these classes are all now hard coupled to event bus, but they are no longer hard coupled to each other, okay? And that's really, really, really important. So long as your new code base in Flappy Bird 2, so long as it has an event bus, you're good, okay? And your systems can now communicate with each other without knowing about each other, okay? Here's the thing to notice. When the player system sends that score event flying through the event bus, does it know how many people will use it? No. It doesn't know about the UI system. It doesn't know about the toast system. If both of these systems were gone and it still published the score event, that score event would come into the event bus and it would go nowhere because no one cares. The event bus just drops the score event. There's nothing to do with it. Okay? And so you see what has happened here. Because of this event bus in the middle, kind of passing event objects around, our player system doesn't care about these systems, and these systems don't care about the player system. Our systems have been soft coupled. They're no longer hard coupled to each other. Okay? They no longer need each other to exist, okay, in order to compile. And this is kind of the magic of the event bus, of PubSub. Yes?
Is there a placement where we define what the score event type is?
Yes. Yep. So typically, your code base will have an event bus, and it will also have a standard list of events that you do port from project to project. Yep. Yes?
So is this primarily for like upgrading a project, or is the purpose for like upgrading a project and for if I want to get rid of the toast system, I don't affect anything?
So one nice thing, way to think about this, I want to show you this, this code from Flappy Bird again. This is a class dedicated to the logic of the game. And the kind of stuff you want in this class is like, yeah, I got points, right? I'm adjusting the high score, okay? That kind of makes sense. But you know what doesn't make a whole lot of sense? If I look at my game control class and I find a bunch of UI code, it's like, wait, this shouldn't be here, right? This is a game control class, not a UI control class. So why is there UI code in my game control, right? Another good example that you see sometimes is you'll have a physics engine doing a lot of math, okay? And then in the middle of the physics engine code base, you'll find some audio calls, right? Why is there a bunch of audio code in the middle of my physics functionality? This doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes you'll find gameplay code doing high score stuff in the middle of your physics engine classes. It's weird. It's nasty, okay? It is a bunch of concerns being put into places that you don't really want them. And so what you could do instead in an event bus-based approach is you could do something like this. You eliminate this code right here. It's gone, but everything still works. Why? Because you've done eventbus.publish, okay, new score event, okay, 2. Or this would be score in this case. Notice there's no toast or UI code here, right? But everything still works. Why? Because now our game control script, our game control system emits events that can be captured by other systems that want to deal with them, okay? And so everything is a little bit cleaned up. Things have gotten a little bit more portable, but now you're separating the concerns of your systems and classes from each other. And so probably your code will get easier to read. And I'll show you that in just a sec. I've got another example. Any other questions or comments? So how does this event bus work? Is it just magical? Because one kind of cool thing is that the event bus doesn't know about these systems either, actually. Okay? So here's how the event bus works. Okay? It is basically a container for a dictionary that maps a type of event to a bunch of functions that want that event. That's all it really is, okay? So what we have here, a private dictionary of type to iList called topics, okay? One type, one key that we might have here is the score event, okay? And in here might be a bunch of functions from different classes. So UI system.scored, toast system.scored, particle system.scored. Maybe the particle system wants to spawn some beautiful particles near the player when they score, okay? But there might be another type of event that exists, KO event. And maybe the UI system's the only one who cares about that. The only system that cares about the KO event and subscribes to it is the UI system, and it uses this function on KO to process events like that, okay? Maybe there's a new player event, and the UI system cares about this, and the audio system cares about this, and they both have their own functions that take that event in and do things with it, okay? And what is going to happen, imagine that the player scores. Well, the player event is going to emit a score event. Let's say that the new score is 2. Okay, it's going to enter into the event bus, all right? So, the player class called the event bus.publish and sent that event in. The event reaches our event bus broker. It uses the type to identify which subscribers care about it, right? So in this case, we're passing in a score event, so we only care about these types, okay, about the score event type and these subscribers, okay? We then go through each subscriber and we call these functions and pass the event in. So UI system gets to see the event, the toast system gets to see the event, and the particle system gets to see the event, okay? And so that's how it goes. You could have another situation where there are multiple systems that are publishing different events. So maybe there's a networking system that handles our high scores and our online multiplayer, maybe. Well, this system might choose to publish a disconnection event. So that disconnection event will go into the event bus, and then maybe it will come out to these other systems. Though currently, by what you can see here, what's going to happen when that network system publishes a disconnected event? What's going to happen? Nothing. Because there is no system that is currently subscribing to disconnect events. You might say, well, it would make a lot of sense for both of these to subscribe to it, because if you've got a connection problem, you probably want to let the user know so they can fix the Wi-Fi or log on to a different one or whatever, okay? But that's how it goes. So the pub-sub architecture here, right? You've got publishers of events, all right? And they don't really care about anything else, right? They just publish events into the ether, and maybe someone grabs them, but maybe nothing grabs them, okay? They don't care, all right? Maybe someone will listen to my events, but it's okay if they don't. Meanwhile, you have subscribers of events, people who want certain events to come through and want to do things with those events if they do show up. And they say, well, events and messages are great, but so is silence, okay? If no events come through, the subscribers are still fine with that, all right? And these two do not know about each other. All they care is what is coming through in terms of events, okay? That's it. They all know the event bus, but they don't know each other, all right? So pub-sub really makes your code chill out and chill and relax, okay? You have loose coupling between all of your systems, and this is super, super, super nice, okay? I want to show you an example of this. We've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to show you a very simple project. You can download this if you want to. It is actually in the course code repository. I'm going to show you a project in which this ball goes around on the sine curve. When this ball hits this block, we will update this text because we have just scored a point. Okay? And I'll show it to you right now. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so there the ball goes, and it hits the block, boom, we get 1 point, and it comes back, hits the block again, boom, 2 points, okay? Now, if you think about the way that you would currently implement something like this, you would implement something like this in kind of an annoying fashion, right? Where, for instance, you detect that a collision has happened between the ball and the cube, and the ball has to get a reference to your canvas and then your score text, and it has to kind of update the text, right? This is an example of coupling, hard coupling, that's not very cool. The ball has to find the score text and has to force it to update. What happens if the score text doesn't exist? The ball breaks, right? Because it goes to look for the score text and it's not there, and so everything breaks. Why should this ball break and stop moving if the score text doesn't exist? Can't the game just continue, right? So here's how it all actually works. Let's look at this moving sphere. This moving sphere has one component on it, actually two. Okay, it has the sine wave movement component that just moves it back and forth. Okay, nothing too crazy. In fact, I think it's just one line of code. Let's see. Yep, it is just one line of code. Super simple. Okay, very nice. It has a component called score point on touch. Let's take a look at it. Okay. When you look into this, you can see that there's a static integer total score. It's static, so it's not going to, reset. It's just going to be there. It's going to be super easy to update. Okay. When you touch a trigger, we increase that total score, and we also publish an event of type score event. This score event is literally just a container for an integer, okay? It has a public int new score, a constructor that lets us set that new score, okay? And then it has this toString convenience function so that if we want to print it out or log it, it's easy to log, okay? It just says this. Okay, you can actually delete this though, and it gets really simple, doesn't it? And so, this code is really nice. I want you to tell me right now, in this component, tell me what line the UI code is on. The code that has to go grab game objects from the UI and then get component text and then set the new text. Tell me what line of code you see that on. You don't, because it doesn't exist. This component, okay, is allowed to focus on only its job, which is to keep track of the score, and then we emit event to tell everyone, if anyone cares, that there is a new score happening. That's it. Simple. Okay? Super easy to write. Like crazy easy to write. Okay? And so, is anyone listening for this event? Does anyone know? Does anyone care about this event? How can we find out? Well, I'm going to right-click in Visual Studio, go find all references to score event, and we can see in here that there are people who care about score event, okay? In fact, we can find one right over here on our score text, okay? This score text has its own interesting components. We've got a text component, of course, but we also have a score UI component. Let's look at that. So you can see here that in this first line of code, we have a call, eventbus.subscribe. Which event do you care about? I care about score events, okay? Okay, what kind of function do you want to process those events, if any come through? There's no guarantee they'll come through, but if any come through, what function do you want to use to process them? This is called kind of a callback, if you've ever heard of that. This is registering a function that will be called later. So on score updated is this function right here. We've just set this up so that if any score events happen in our code base, we run this function in response to them, okay? So what do? Well, we grab our text component, which is right here, and we change its score, okay? Change its score to say score, and then E, which is the event object, dot new score, okay? New score is just that integer that we saw a few moments ago, okay? This new score value gets set by the score point on touch via its constructor, okay? And so I want you to look at this function right here, okay? Look at this code right here. Tell me where the collision detection happens. Tell me where this component detects that the ball has hit the cube. And the answer is it doesn't care. It never does. We are not putting collision logic into our UI component, okay? And hopefully the beauty of all of this becomes a little bit more clear. This approach, this pub-sub approach, allows you to publish events and subscribe to events
But you only publish the events you care about. You only subscribe to ones you care about. And the rest, you just do your job, okay? The score UI only does things in response to a score event coming through. It doesn't have to track where the ball and where the cube is. It doesn't have to do any collision detection, okay? You don't have to reach out and find other game objects and manipulate them or check them or watch them. You just wait for the relevant event to come through, and when it does, you update your stuff. That's it. Super easy. It's kind of like if you're sitting at home and you just wait for a letter to come into your mailbox, and when the letter comes in, you do what you need to do. You pay your taxes, okay? You stay home because the letter told you that, school's canceled, right, for the day, right? Okay, so there are a couple other things of interest here, okay? There's a subscription data type. This is a subscription that is generically typed on score event, okay? So templates, basically. Templated on score event. So this is a subscription for a score event, and we call it score event subscription. This is a handler that allows us to keep track of this subscription over time. And if we ever want to cancel that subscription, we can do it easily. Have any of you used the onDestroy function? This is a function that automatically runs, kind of like start or update, but it runs at the end of the component's life cycle. When this component is destroyed, right, then it will run. So this is saying, hey, when this object is destroyed, this component gets destroyed, please unsubscribe us from this event because we don't need it anymore, okay? We can actually get rid of this if you want to and make it even more simple. So let's delete this. The code just becomes ultra simple if you do this, okay? And now it's fine. It's going to work, okay? Now, if you forget to unsubscribe, you might get some exceptions later because the event bus, when any sort of score event comes through, it's going to try and run this function, but this function is on a component that no longer exists. It got destroyed. So you might get some errors, right? But things will probably still keep working. It'll just be a bit annoying. Anyway, PubSub is so powerful because it allows you to simplify your systems, allow them to focus only on their job and not on what any other system is doing. And it provides a way for systems to communicate with each other without caring about each other, without thinking about each other, without worrying if there's a toast system that exists in my code base, okay? And so that keeps everything very nice and clean. One thing you might do, as we discussed earlier, is you might say, you know what, I want to have a kind of standardized place to create events. So sometimes what I do is this, standard events. And I'm going to go into the standard event script. I'm going to get rid of monobehavior because this is not meant to be a component, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a C# file where I'm going to put my events. That's it. That simplifies all my components. So this is broken now, but as soon as I put my event into standard events right here, right, we are golden, okay? I save, and then we are back in business. So now, my score UI component is ultra simple. Oh, I accidentally deleted my score UI. I deleted the wrong thing, okay? So I'm going to save that. Are you sad about this for some reason? I don't think you are. What's up?
It's not a mono.
Oh, yeah, it needs mono behavior. Yeah. Okay, so I'll add mono behavior back in. There we go. Yep. Thank you. And so now things are just extremely, extremely simple, okay? I can go to my moving sphere. Score point on touch, right, is just a handful of lines of code, super easy to read. The only code you find in here, all of it relates to detecting that collision and adjusting the score. That's it, okay? So here's how development will probably go as you get more into Project 2. At first, you don't have any events you're probably thinking too much about. But eventually you say, hey, my game has a health system, okay? So what you might do is you might go into standard events. You might say, I need an event that lets me know that health has changed. So you say, hey, I want to create a new event, public class. Let's go health change event, okay? Now you might say, okay, well, what do I want to store here? I want to store, maybe I care about, okay, what is my new health? So that's a variable I want to have in here. So let's go new health. What's another thing I might want to know if a score event comes flying through the event bus? You know, what's the new health, right? But also, what else might be super important to know? What if there are multiple things in your game that have health?
Which object has the health?
Yeah, which object just had its health changed? So maybe I have a string to say, character that changed health. Or you might say something like this. I'm going to make this the game object, okay? Or you could have a has health component or something like that. I'll just stick with game object for now, okay? You could say, I want to make sure that someone who is emitting this event, publishing this event, always specifies these two things. So I'll create a constructor, health change event, and I'll say, hey, you have to tell me what that new health is going to be, and you have to tell me what game object got affected. Okay. And I'll just kind of plug these things in like that, new health, okay, and affected object, there we go, okay. Oops, let's do this. Done. All right, we have a new event. You could then do something like, I don't know, this moving sphere is going to take damage when it touches the object, okay. So maybe we'll go and say, actually, this score cube, let's make damage on touch, right? This is a component that we wrote for the rollerball game not too long ago, right? If you remember that. So let's write a damage on touch, and what we'll do is we're going to detect on trigger enter, okay? When we touch something, we're going to go event bus dot publish, okay? Let's publish a new event, but of what type? Health change event. Okay, what is the new health? Well, maybe our ball has a certain amount of health, so we might be able to store that, actually. Let's go and just store that temporarily for now. Let's just say it's going to be, the new health is going to be 1, okay? Or maybe 99, because we start at 100. What is the object that's having its health change? It's going to be the one that we touched, so other.gameObject, okay? And now, if anyone cares, we can actually do our thing. So let's say that the score UI actually cares now, okay? I want to subscribe, and I want to know whenever anyone has changed their health. So subscribe to health change event. I have a new function that I want to process this, void on health changed, okay? And it's going to take in a health change event called E. We're going to hook this up, okay? Now this function will run whenever anything takes damage, and we can just maybe do a debug.log. Okay, game object, let's go e.game, actually, we can't access it, can we? Oh, we can. It's called character that changed health. So character that changed health dot name, okay, now has health. Let's go e.new health, okay? And let's run this and let's see what happens. Okay, we're going to watch this console right here. Watch this console and see what happens. Okay, we're going to go through, and boop. And what do we see? Game object moving sphere now has health 99. Okay, so now we are communicating with the UI. We are telling the UI system that the health has changed, but our scripts do not know about each other, okay? Our damage on touch component does not know about the UI, and the UI does not know about the damage on touch component, and yet they are communicating successfully, okay? So this is what I recommend you do for Project 2. Get your event bus into your code base. This is a component that you should download from the assignment spec, or actually from the agenda. You can download the event bus script right here and use it if you want to. A quick thing to remember, you can turn it off of debug mode and it will stop putting all of these messages into your log. Okay, that'll give you much more performance and clean your logs up, right? Yeah, I hope you use this pattern. I hope you really enjoy it. Almost everyone who uses it does end up really liking it. Super good for when you want to let your entire code base, many different systems, know that something small happened, okay? So that they can just respond. It'll clean your components up, allow them to focus just on their one unique job, and yeah, hopefully your code base will be much, much cleaner, okay? You'll also be able to bring your technology that you write from project to project much easier as well, okay? All right, everyone. I wish you a fantastic weekend. Please get started on your P2. Start prototyping, start thinking about what you want to do, and we will see you next week, all right? See you then.
What does that have to do with
Hey, what's up?
So with the polish system,
Yeah.
you need to worry about having like a bunch of objects all trying to read and then like slowing down the game because they're all trying to read and respond.
So if you leave logging on, it will slow down the game a great deal.
Yeah.
But if you turn logging off, it's not a huge deal. In general, you won't encounter performance issues until you've got thousands of objects flying through the event bus in the same frame.
Okay.
So eventually it becomes a performance issue, but it's really not right now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I guess like if I had like I don't know an explosion that hit every object, every like enemy, and they all sent like a damn. Okay.
Yeah, then you want to think about other ways to do this. Yeah.
But not probably an issue. It's less.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey, what's
On
up?
the Twitch stream.
Yep, I'm still
I have
running.
a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, would you like me to shut it off?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's
So everyone, thank you for joining us, and we will we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.